I'm Alan Bressler. I head up web development at CBS Local. That means online, mobile, and interactive TV, as we're starting to get a little more into that. We actually launched a digital channel today. So it's only over the air, but eventually it'll be on cable as well. So that's a little bit about us, kind of where, what do we cover, what are we all about? So we manage and run the websites and mobile sites for the owned and operated CBS local TV and radio stations. So the easiest example is in New York, CBS 2 TV. I think most people know about that. 1010 Wins, 880 WFAN. And then on the music side, 3 or 4 music stations as well. So the business model is we've kind of aggregated all the sites together into kind of market verticals. So if you want to find anything out about New York, from sports to traffic to weather to travel, it's all in one place, CBS New York, and we've done that, we've just duplicated that model across the country in 30 markets. And so between those 30 markets, we've got, we're running over 130, 140 individual websites across those different markets. And our platform is obviously WordPress, and we are hosted on WordPress VIP. For those of you who don't know what WordPress VIP is, it's WordPress.com for enterprise. So we're really familiar, obviously, with the WordPress .com platform. And I can keep going. No, and so that's just a little bit about us. It kind of gives a couple of the other stats that I wanted to kind of throw out there, just along with those 30 markets and all those stations and all those sites. So typically we're some numbers in ComScore. By ComScore's measurements, we're typically in the top 5 for visits, page views, and time on site. So that kind of gives you an idea, a little bit of the scale that we're talking about here. So generally we're up there with the likes of AOL, Yahoo Local, Yelp, and those kind of companies. So I think it gives you a little bit of an idea of kind of, again, hopefully as we talk about the methodology and the thought process that went into this, that will help kind of give a little bit of background on that. Anything on that, I'll hand it over to Andy, who leads up our development, and take it from here.
All right. So the first thing that everybody should know about WordPress VIP, it is WordPress.com, like Alan said. And what that means is, for anybody here who uses .com, we're allowed to use the same set of plugins that you are. Anything else that we want to use, we have to build. So that is the one advantage that we do get, is we are allowed to build our own theme and our own plugins. But the WordPress plugin directory is more or less off limits to us. So when we want to do something, we tend to have to do it custom. So the day we launched our first site, which was August of 2010, the one option that we had was we were allowed to use their own version of WP Touch. It's the same, give or take, WP Touch that you can download from the plugin directory. And it's the same that everybody knows already. We ran with that for a few months, but there are some limitations to it. Some of the big ones, we lose all our Google Analytics. So we want to report stuff to advertisers and potential business partners. We lose anything mobile. We can't count that. Obviously, we lose our ads, which means we're losing revenue every time somebody goes to our mobile site. There's no concept of a custom post type. Everything is a post or a page, and anything that we wanted to make custom to our theme, which is rather large and full of custom post types, we lost that. We lost our nav. We're forced to use the nav that WP Touch uses, which is not at all what ours looked like. Ours is massive, and the guys are laughing because it's huge. And it's very specific to what we do. I'm sorry, the news, sports, traffic, and weather that Alan mentioned, that's what we really wanted to focus with on our nav, and we lost that there. And we also lost our brand. Part of being CBS is an established brand that people know. People who listen to the radio, they know WFAN, they know WCBS, they know 1010 Wins. And when you come to our site, that's very clearly where you are, but when you go to the mobile site, it just looks like any other blog. So we decided that it was time for us to build a custom theme. So the first thing we did was we took a look at our homepage. and you can't see anything on that homepage, because our homepage, you scroll for days. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on that page. We have a lot of content, and our sidebars, and everything's there on the homepage. Obviously, that does not work on a mobile site. So the first question is, do we go with responsive design? That's kind of the new hotness right now. Everybody wants to take what they have and make it work on a mobile site. So what do you need to do? You need to filter out the noise, right? So you slap a display none on, slap another display none, another display none, another display none. I mean, you look at that page, it's so big, and at the end of the day, you're not reducing the data size. That's a ton. I think our homepage is easily a meg. By the time you download all the graphics and everything, hopefully your browser is going to do a great job of caching it, and you're not going to do that every time, but still, that's a lot of data to have to download on a mobile site. So then we decided, all right, let's start from scratch and build us a brand new theme. So we needed to figure out what pieces of the theme weren't necessary, what we didn't feel needed to be on that little tiny, 3.5-inch, 4-inch screen that everybody's carrying around. So we have a huge editorial team, not just on the national level, but very specifically on the market level, and they're pumping in tons of stuff all day. Not necessarily the stuff that we're trying to drive to our customers, but there's a ton of that. That's the point of the latest content isn't always the best. Just because it's the last thing to happen in the news doesn't mean it's what we want to show people. There are certain things that we always want to feature, and we're able to do that on our full site. And we wanted a way to bring that to our mobile site. And we wanted to keep the pieces of the site that everybody had become accustomed to. We want to make sure that those were maintained. So we sat down, we said, we broke the site down into a few major pieces. We had our homepage, we had our section fronts, which are more or less the categories, but they're a bit more than that. We have our articles, and we have our search. Search is big. Everybody searches. So we took a look at our homepage, and it kind of blends with the section fronts a little bit. There's a little bit of overlap in terms of functionality. And I believe, we're not there yet, but in the upcoming weeks or so, I think they will completely bleed in terms of functionality. The big feature we have at the top is our carousel, what we call the DL. And this is the way that we can feature, and that our editorial team can feature the content that they really want users to focus on. So whatever the latest story is will fall down into the blog roll, and the breaking news will still be up at the top of the page. And we have, as you saw, gigantic sidebars. And those just needed to go. They're full of Facebook and Twitter and RSS feeds and stuff that's not really important to the user experience on that little tiny screen. We wanted them to feature our content and not worry about everything else. We want people to be able to share our content and, in a way that still looked good on a mobile screen. And the last piece was our search. It's a Google custom search, which is the same search that we use on our full site. The only difference is we show fewer results on a page. I think we show 5 or something like that on our mobile site, and I think it's 10 on the full site. But it's the same exact search, you're getting the same exact results. And so here's what, at the end of the day, this is our homepage. We have our mobile, our DL, our carousel on the top, and for anybody who may already be following along on their phone, that is swipeable, which was one of the fun things that we did. And I can open up a simulator a little bit later, but I'm horrible at using it, so we can try. And we have, we featured 3 categories on our homepage. And I grabbed the best of one because pictures of food are always good. News isn't always so exciting. But so that is our mobile homepage, and that look, that people come there, they see our stations. We'll eventually be adding the music stations to that as well. But this definitely is a big step up for us from the WP Touch theme. And so I want to open this up for some Q&A. We have our head of product is here, so I'd like him to come up here and potentially help answer some of his questions, since a lot of these decisions were his. Yes?
I was wondering how, given the itty-bitty space on a mobile phone, how you work in the advertising, how are you maximizing the return on it when you can only do so many pages?
Right, so as you can see here, this little tiny bit at the very bottom of the left screenshot it's a mobile ad. Currently, we only have one of those on every page. We're in the process of, we work with Outbrain is one of our partners, and we're in the process of rolling out that on our mobile site as well. And we have other partners that we work with as well. We'll probably be looking to add those.
So you think it'll be more like text-based, article-based information?
Well, I mean, there is an ad integration on section fronts, and then on every article page, we have that 320 by 50 ad on the top of every article. So, I mean, we generate a fair amount of traffic on our mobile site, so just those integrations alone, it's been pretty successful from a revenue standpoint, but we are looking for other ways to monetize the mobile app without cannibalizing, without destroying the user experience.
Actually, one really quick point that I forgot to mention is not only are we seeing, not just from this, but from other initiatives, not only is absolute traffic to our mobile site growing, but also as a percentage of our overall traffic, month over month, week over week. We have people that look at this stuff ad nauseum. Mobile traffic is growing absolutely, and as a percentage of overall traffic. So we definitely see this as, a really great opportunity, and obviously to find good opportunities to monetize it is obviously really important for us as well. So.
Could you talk about your font choices and legibility issues? I mean, I haven't looked at it on my phone, but right off the top, it's a large margin around the tab, the word home, news, and stuff. The word home has, it's white against blue. I mean, was there a concern about visual bleeding, things like that?
I mean, in setting up the grid, we felt that, it was very important to use very, very large fonts. Did we have a science to it? No. We did a lot of internal testing, and we made sure that the hit area on the tab was big enough for your thumb. We don't want to, have a user kind of mistap on a tab. We limited it to 4 tabs up top. That's another way that we kind of tweaked the design to kind of fit in this very small window. And then just overall, if you very large buttons to kind of navigate through the DL. We use that throughout on the bottom of each of our blog rolls. There's a more button, which is again about the size of your thumbprint. So just overall, just any sort of control UI element, we made sure that it had plenty of padding so that again the text is very legible, and then the hit area is fairly distinct enough to very easily click on it. If you're on a train or something.
And internally, did you did you decide icons versus text, and which was more intuitive?
So I mean, our concern, of course, is having a site that's completely optimized for very low bandwidth areas. And what you're seeing here on our site is mostly everything is HTML5, from the buttons to the tabs. Obviously, the branding on top is not. But so we've created the site so that it requires very little additional iconography or images for UI elements. They're all HTML5 UI elements.
Yes, yeah. Oh.
Is this a separate site, or is it a plugin that runs off the same WordPress install?
It's a separate theme installed into the same WordPress instance, and we'll get into the specifics a little bit later, but there's a plugin that sits in between to know which theme to load up.
That's the second half of tonight. That's what we'll get into all that stuff.
Yes.
I see, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
Based on the wide variety of content that you have and unique users' interests within their particular part of the country they have and so on, one of the nice benefits of having a smaller screen estate and limiting choices is the opportunity for personalization. Right. I'm curious if you have that opportunity right now, or you're trying to take advantage of it perhaps in the future so that maybe the sports button or certain other features would be more prominent, and either in the direct navigation or within perhaps this user tends to be clicking on more sports stories or more news and classified stories, so let's try and show related content in an ongoing smart user profile type of way.
So like right now, we don't really have any plans to integrate that onto the mobile site. However, the customization is really on the back end for the editorial team, because what you're seeing there is completely customizable. They can go in and rather than have the news up top, they can have their sports content up top. Or they can, the tabs on the top of the screen here are a menu within WordPress. So, not all of our sites create the same amount of content or the same categories of content. So in that aspect, that's where it's customizable. But as far as customizing it from the user, it's something that we plan to explore on our full website, and then maybe once we get some learning, we'll extend it to the mobile site. But that's kind of where we are with that. You in the center there?
I was wondering, now that apps come out with very specific uses, Yelp, or you have a weather app built in on most phones. How are you guys responding to that in terms of serving up content for users? I mean, this isn't just for the mobile site, but for the website. And where do you see your content going? When users are maybe not going to CBS Local for weather or whatever, but their own sources.
So I mean, I think yeah, we've got a little bit of a panel up here who's going to answer the question, but I think in terms of that, so we do have kind of a multi, experience kind of, where we're trying to get to. So we have downloadable apps that that go to the iTunes store or Android market, and you can go and download, and the content will be kind of in one sort of format. Generally pulling from RSS feeds and aggregating there. We also look to syndicate our content out. So on the web, we syndicate our content out to Yahoo, and on mobile, we're looking to work with, syndicate with. I think it's Pulse is a big reader. Where there's another one also. So I think we have kind of like a content syndication strategy to get our content out there that ultimately will hopefully drive to the mobile site, because if it's Pulse, there's going to be, read the full article, that's going to take you to the full web, to the mobile website, web experience, but also to have different kinds of apps and maybe have different apps that have different content. Just, off the top of my head, we do a lot of streaming audio, streaming radio. So there's going to be kind of that experience where if that's what you want to get to, you'll go to a different, it'll be a different app or maybe a different mobile experience where you'll get that kind of experience. Which may have some news articles littered through it, just so that we get that, either engagement stays high or we can drive people to the mobile web or other apps and things like that. So we kind of do have, we try to have a pretty broad range of kind of different strategy for getting the content out there. So hope that addresses that question.
Yeah.
When did you say you launched?
I think New York went up in August of 2010. It was the first
That was
full
the
site launch.
first website.
The first mobile was last year.
This thing, when did you do this?
This mobile thing? Over the summer?
Over the summer.
This summer.
Spring to the summertime, yeah.
What about the iPad? And
So,
tablets issues?
actually what we do for iPad is we just a full site experience. So we have access to the WordPress.com iPad theme. We just use our regular full experience on that. I feel it's good enough for what we've got. We haven't customized it.
What about comments? I'm just reading the Charlie Samuel story, and it says sound off, at the bottom, and there's no option to do it.
Yeah, so we are actually integrating with a third party for mobile commenting. So that's to come. I mean, there's a lot of stuff still to come. I mean, if you look at the content on our site, we have a pretty long roadmap for the things that we want to include. So there's definitely a lot more to come.
Yeah, so some of the things that we're planning in the next couple of months is adding traffic, adding weather. Those are two really big staples for our full site that would require a little bit more work. again, going to our mobile approach was, let's try to get something up really, really quickly, and then iterate it as we, as we understand how users are using our product. So a lot of the requests that we're getting is, where's my traffic, where's my weather? And those are two things that we're in the final stages of implementing now.
I'm just kind of curious, on how does your staff break down? How big is your department? And how many
So-
developers, designers?
My
Are you part of
product
it?
team right now is 6 deep, not including myself. I have an art director, I have a UX director, I have a product director, and then each of them have a direct report or 1 or 2 direct reports. Planning to grow that over the next quarter, probably double my team. So that's kind of where my team is.
Sure.
And then on the development side, I mean, in terms of, so we have, I mean, a couple of different, not groups, but we have some guys who focus more on the WordPress side, and then we do some things outside of WordPress as well, which is a different team. On the WordPress side, I'd say half a dozen people. In terms of developers, then we have, the typical project manager, support person for support, and then obviously a pretty robust QA team as well. So, 5 or 6 people on the QA side. Again, the thing that is a little bit hard for us is that, we're not doing this once. We're doing this 24 to 30 to 40 times over. So each market is different content. So it kind of makes everything scale,
Sure.
pretty quickly.
Hold it back.
With CBS New York, iOS app, is that a wrapper around WordPress?
No. The in terms of what's in the App Store, it's a totally separately developed app. It leverages more of the feeds that are coming through, and then displays those along with some other features like around traffic, weather, listening to the live streams and things like that.
So when you did all this, each site is its own site, there's no dynamic, you don't have like a dynamic framework that loads each site?
No, it's all one theme. I mean, it's all one theme in WordPress, so you can push it out. I was referring more to on the content side. So a lot of times, I mean, maybe not so much on the mobile because it's more content based, but in terms of on the full site, when you have all these different widgets and different pieces that people can dynamically add to the pages, we want to make sure that nothing that we do there breaks anything else. So kind of testing that becomes, a pretty,
So that's not standardized across? all
pretty
the
big
sites?
process. But it is, yes.
Oh.
In other words, if a widget is available in New York, it's available in LA, it's available in San Francisco, and we can test that one widget in one theme and know that it's going to work all over the place.
One other follow-up. Now, is your content crossover content, or is it always unique to a specific site?
For these sites, they're unique to a specific site. We focus on, again, a little more on the business side, we focus on local content. Even in the cases where there are national stories, we will typically link off to either CBS News or CBS Sports for more of the national flavor. An example is, off the top of my head, when Bin Laden was killed, we did have markets that went out and created stories, and then we told them the appropriate thing to do in this case is to link out to CBS News because it's more of a national
So
story.
like the story you just had on Dolan, wouldn't that be effectively a national story even though it's local?
It has a little more of a New York flavor because he's from New York, so that's kind of, there's that question of, what's local, what's national, and there's always a fine line. So there's, certain places, and we just have kind of editorial control. We have best practices on the editorial side to manage that.
Since you're actually serving up a different theme for your mobile site, I'm wondering to what extent you went with semantics, with meta information, since I'm not even sure, did Google ever actually spider?
No.
Okay.
No, unless Google passes in a user agent that is recognized as Google, it wouldn't pick it up.
Did you guys put the same keywords, same?
It's all driven through the same admin. I think we were able to leave off a bunch of tags that you would normally include in a site that will get spidered. Because it's the user agent that controls which theme that gets picked up.
Right.
So when Googlebot comes in, it just gets passed on to the full site. So people on the editorial side, when they enter keywords and descriptions that they want, if we put them in the mobile theme, they would be exactly the same. It's the same content, just configured differently.
So if you actually left it up, you could pretty much speed up.
Yeah, and that was part of why we wanted to go custom, was not just the visual stuff, but all the JavaScript that we load up that we don't need, and any other tags that we don't need, just any characters that we could strip out.
And an interesting thing, I mean, you know, Andy and I were talking about it, and maybe he was going to mention it in the second half, but, you know, when we initially approached this, we kind of said, how do we even approach this? Where do we start? And we actually kind of started by eliminating stuff. And then, you know, after a little bit, a week or two of doing that, we kind of came to the realization, like, this may not be the best approach to take. And then we actually flipped it and we said, let's start with nothing and start to build it up. And then that just ended up being so much more efficient, you know, not only just in terms of saying, hey, you know, everyone loves a fresh start, like how often do you actually get to do that? But we're able to really think about and look at kind of what did we want to do, what was the best approach for everything, and kind of start from there, so.
Going off on that comment and also what you said about the mobile site is just a WordPress menu that's managed. So how does the editorial staff on the back end, I mean, they're essentially managing two sites when they log in, right? Even though the theme is different, the back end, I'm assuming, is the same.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
So, I mean, was that a challenge creating?
The nav is created the same way, all through WordPress menus, and so news is a category. So it's and if you look at a full site menu, you have home, news, sports, and best of in most of our markets as the first 4 items, and those are the 4 items you would see on most of our mobile sites. So it's the same categories. So whenever they put something in news, it will get pulled through for both.
It's not a mobile nav
and they're 2 separate navs in the admin, because we wanted to lock it down to those, whereas somebody may not have those categories. Some of our markets we don't have sports stations in. So they'll have sports content, but it's not driven by us. We get it from a partner. So maybe their sports tab is further to the right, but that's one of our staples, so we want to move it back to the left.
Was that a challenge building an admin for your editorial staff to manage essentially 2 sites with the same content and setting?
We do that in a couple of different places. So it actually, I think we had the advantage of having to do that before. Like, we'll have different stories that get, so like in the CBS, family, we have radio.com, and that's more of like a streaming music site, but they also pull in our content. So we already had editorially used to knowing that they were syndicating to there, so we may use the same flags that say syndicate to this, syndicate to that. The same thing, like I mentioned, this digital channel that we launched. We actually had to build again for a couple different reasons. First of all, for content, but also for like bad word filtering and kind of obviously anything you're going to show on TV has to have we wanted to make sure there was an extra eye on it. So we built a separate admin outside of WordPress that hooked into WordPress. And so we knew that they were used to saying, okay, this is something that we want on this channel. This is something we want on mobile. This is something we want on there. And so editorial was kind of used to it because we had to do it in a bunch of different places already. We just kind of were able to leverage that. And we do get a little pushback from editorial. Oh, hey, this is, now it's so much harder to publish this. You're adding to our workflow. But, unfortunately, it's, the way it's got to be. Right? We want it to be
every article.
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, I would say that from the full website to the mobile website, we haven't really introduced any additional work for them. The same DL that's on our full homepage is the same DL that's on the mobile site. So and we've made recommendations to them on let's not create shorter headlines, especially for mobile. But
good example.
We like title like this.
Right.
I got it.
And short titles. And see, I always do that when I swipe on the same line.
What about to the ad side? Extra work-wise? Or specifically, in instances where the editorial side would be working on the ad side, maybe driving the story or...
Yeah, I mean, we don't do too much specific targeting. I don't think we do any actually targeting to specific articles on the ad tags. So I don't think that was a big issue. We do that more in terms of the WordPress on.
Yeah, we do the categories.
Right, we'll do categories, we'll do maybe tags, but that again will just carry over from the regular full website.
And usually custom post types. will
And then,
have-
right, custom post types or pages, we actually have a way of tagging pages with a certain ad tag, and then we can target that. But we do that more on pages, not on articles. So it didn't really come into play here.
I noticed that while you have the carousel there, when you're on a regular story, you can't swipe to go to the next one. I don't see a
Yeah.
next button. I might be missing
So
something.
that's, this actually, the mobile site that we have now was created before we had that DL on subcategory pages. We do have that now, so in the next iteration of our mobile site, we will extend that functionality to category pages.
What do you get from the WordPress VIP product? Like, why did you end up choosing that?
We don't get phone calls at 4 a.m. on a Saturday that a server's down. That's why we're doing these things. A lot of it is the expertise of people running the largest WordPress installation in the world. Right? And I'll get into it a little bit later, but when I have a question about what's the best way to approach this, who's better than the people that run a WordPress site to answer that? So there's definitely that level of comfort that we get from them. We also get, if you go to a WordPress.com site, you'll see lots of times related stories from other WordPress.com sites. So we get thrown into that pool, which is great because we get traffic from them. We send traffic to them. So that's really what I know. It was something that we personally inherited when we joined CBS. It was already in place on the music side, which is now being brought in under the one umbrella. But I think there are about 100 sites there. So trying to maintain 100 WordPress sites is a lot of work, even if you're running it on a multi-user site. So having them, you do give up some control, but 10% of the internet, I think was the last stat I heard for WordPress.com. So we have that. It's always going to be able to scale, and we have people there to help us out.
Yeah, so they handle the spikes. I think there was with the Giants parade, with the Giants Super Bowl, with Whitney Houston over the weekend. We get these, or even just random things. Another big one was, believe it or not, the Charlie Sheen thing. Probably close to a year ago already. Where it just stays nice and smooth no matter what we do. So it just, they've got 3 huge data centers and everything bounced across that. They literally handle all backups for us. If we need to roll back a couple days, they've been able to do that for us. So it's like a pretty end-to-end full service. And we can concentrate on the product, we concentrate on the development, and we don't have to concentrate on the infrastructure. So it's kind of
So are the users going to CBS.com and seeing local content, or do they have to go to the studio?
There are vanity domains like CBSNYC.com, CBSLA.com, CBSBoston.com, and then they will get redirected to that subdomain, NewYork.CBSLocal.com. And all of our subdomains are set up that way. So it's marketname.cbslocal.com.
And even like other brands like WFAN.com tend to domains so that the stations themselves might promote that. So we have lots of vanity domains that point to the same place.
How do you guys like this iOS Simulator app? I've never heard of it.
That's part of Xcode.
Yeah, it's part of Xcode.
It's nice for looking at how something's going to look on an iPhone. Honestly, I usually do most of my work using a user agent switcher, full browser, to spoof being an iPhone, so I can actually look at stuff. But you can't, something like being able to swipe our DL, you're not going to get in Firefox or Chrome. So for that, this is really handy, especially when people we didn't used to have any iPhones just lying around the office when we first started this project. We always had to use somebody's. Sometimes it's hard to get somebody to just hand you their iPhone. So for that, it's great. But like I said, most of my development, I just use a user agent switcher and inspect stuff.
What do you recommend?
I have some random Firefox plugin that I found. I think newer versions of Chrome have a settings in the inspector where you can now change it after you've loaded it. It used to be you had to load up the user agent when you started Chrome, which, you know, if you're not used to running Chrome from a command line, is not so fun. But I think they've added that now built into the inspector.
We doing geolocation? Just with the CBS local and
You would think.
Yeah.
That was what I
Yes, we did.
When I started working here, I sent that to friends out in California, expecting them to see the San Francisco site, and they got New York unbeknownst to me.
So, yeah, CBS local actually just redirects to the New York site. That was the first one.
It was the first one up, so it
was the
won.
first one up.
Is that
You know,
you plan on changing?
yeah, so see, you know, we've had plans for CBS local for a while.
Yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
fallen
It's on
to
the
the
roadmap.
bottom, you know, of the list a little bit. It's a little more, you know, business. We want to promote ourselves and probably aggregate content across our network. So having that as a landing page. You know.
Yeah, the challenge is CBS Local is not right now a consumer brand, and we're going to change that in the market, make it more of a consumer brand. That's also our roadmap. So, back there.
What, I assume you're using a JavaScript or jQuery library for the touch and mobile stuff. I was wondering if you're using an open source one?
We are. It's called Flex Slider. I think it's Flex Slider by Muffin. Well, that was something we would get into later, but it's the same one that we use across everything. It's not just for mobile. And it provides simulated swipes. I think they look at the delta X and the delta Y, and if you don't move vertically too much and you move horizontally enough, it counts it as a swipe. It works much better on an actual screen than it does on the simulator, because if you don't let go of the mouse just right on the simulator, it'll go to the article. It makes it not fun to test. But
What changes from your analytics, what changes have sort of generated by understanding the user experience? I mean, what have you altered based on seeing how people use it?
Right. Well, I would say for one, I mean, mostly we've extended this to the full website. So I would say, you know, we found that in the previous iteration of our site, stuff that editorial wanted to promote had a very short shelf life, because there was very little promotional space on the homepage of the sports section. So you can see, like, you know, if there's a big Super Bowl article on the homepage promoted high on the page, the minute that it would get pushed out, we would see that the traffic would drop pretty drastically. So when we were looking at our section fronts and redesigning them, we created more ways of editorial to kind of push their content up top, so that, again, it'll have a longer shelf life. That's one. And then I think others was that when we added, on our full site, again, when we added stuff to the nav, which is pretty obvious that this would happen, you know, as opposed to other layers of links, whether it be in our header or our footer or wherever, traffic was usually tenfold just by adding a link in our nav. And that's something that we learned in kind of tweaking how our nav works and just what items we want to promote in our nav. So those are kind of general learnings that we've had throughout the time of looking at analytics and looking at how generally.
And anything specific to male, female, or older, younger, or, you know, even Spanish speaking, English speaking?
I can't say no. I think
And will you have multilingual version?
currently we do not. So it's not on our roadmap, but it's definitely something that we should consider.
Well, competition always seems to come up when someone's designing websites, whether or not to use a home button or just use a logo, and you can take up some significant, you know, prime real estate with a home button.
Right.
Is that something you guys discussed, or instead of just clicking on the CBS logo on top?
Yeah, so again, the mobile website does kind of, it behaves much like our full website in that the home, you know, we do have a home link on the full website. I don't know, I mean, I think we're very close with that being a convention, but I just still feel that there should be some place to ground the user, you know, by clicking on that home link. We have played around with, just to kind of save real estate, just moving to an icon. But again, just something that I always kind of want to implement across all of our sites, just having that home tab.
You'd be amazed how many people don't know to click the logo.
And then not only that, but like on our full site, the logos actually go, like 1010 Wins, WFAN, CBS Studio, will go to different places. So they go to an actual station page. So, which is all the more important to have that home link at the top now.
Custom post types, you mentioned them a few times. I was curious what you use them for specifically, if you would use a few examples.
Sure.
There's many creative ways of using them.
Yes. So I think we've come up with a lot of creative ways of using
Seraphin
custom post
is the
types.
master at creating custom post types.
I don't know if that was a good comment. So we've done stuff like, and there's a lot of stuff we have in development, but you know, off the top of my head, we have a custom post type to create top lists, which is a big part of the best of content. So what are the 5 best places to find a hamburger or whatever it be. So something that's more like bucketed content. Then we're using them for another custom post type that's called a guide. So it's more of an in-depth view of one place, which will have, you know, we'll create all this sub-nav within the post. We're working on itineraries right now. And then we've also used custom post types to build sections, which is kind of an interesting thing, I think, where, you know, editorial, let's say the homepage is considered a section, and editorial has a really, really big story they push out, and they want to have a full width dynamic lead. So they'll have the ability to go into this custom post type and check a box, and then it'll essentially change the grid where that, you know, whether it be full width DL, full width carousel, or changing the categories on the homepage. They can very easily do that through a custom post type, through a bunch of drop downs. And that custom post type just replaces the category layout, dictates certain elements in that category layout. So we've used them for very general posts, and then we're beginning to use them more on creating layouts for our subsection pages. So,
what was some of the decisions on socializing? Because I noticed on the mobile app, you only have it specifically within the article, but not necessarily on the homepage.
Right.
So what was just kind of the rationale, and also just kind of discussing that, or maybe not the text thing, but the business side, and kind of telling them that this is where to go?
Right. Well, I mean, just looking at our analytics, generally people don't share home pages or section fronts. They do share articles tremendously. So we felt that the biggest bang for our buck was to, and mind you, you know, we're talking about a very, very small area. So, you know, any placement that we take up, you know, any element is extremely, we need to make sure it's completely justified. So clearly having the sharing functionality on articles made complete sense. We had sharing once on our homepage, and, you know, we never really got any lift from it. So we felt like that was one of the things that we learned through analytics, and that we didn't extend to our mobile site.
And what are you using for, like, what plugin for the mobile?
We are currently using Atlas.
For the
sharing?
Yeah, Atlas. Yes.
And we use it for both, and then we just style it slightly differently.
Yeah, I think.
Is there one more?
Yes, yeah. I was wondering whether or not you're doing any native apps for the iPhone or for Android, like if you were doing anything with Objective-C, so someone could download an app and get to your site. Like
Yes, so we do have apps for 12 markets, right? So yes, we do have that. We also promote it on the mobile website.
Yeah, probably had to say.
Yeah, I have cookies.
So the first time a user comes to our mobile website, and, you know, the cookie lasts for 30 days, right? They'll get this. drop-down where it'll promote our native app. So, and we plan to do more native apps.
And we have
So
an Android
the
as well.
native
and-
apps can connect to the same content that the people who connect to it directly from the web do? Does it pretty much go to the same place?
The app, the current state of the app is it's more like an RSS reader. So that the potential for that to change in the near future is very great. And then what this thing does is in the we have something that's called the station administrator, where what it allows us to, it's basically what's different from site to site. And here we input links to the iPhone app and the Android app. And then based on the user agent, it will show them either a promotion for download the Android app or the iPhone app.
All right, so one of the big questions everybody had was what was the library that did the slideshow? So it's called Impress.js. It's open source. It's on GitHub. If you go to this address, that will take you right to the presentation, which is also on GitHub. And I've provided links to all sorts of fun stuff that we use to make this happen. We have Impress.js. I have up there a couple times because it was a huge help for the presentation and for site. Here's the plugin that we use for the carousel. It's Flex Slider. We wanted to give VIP a link because they're a huge part of what we do. And this will be the plugin that we're going to quickly look at that we use. So the way we got started with this was once we knew we needed to build a custom theme, we said, well, how do we make that work? At the end of the day, this is all hosted by WordPress, so we need to know how it works in their system, even more importantly than we need to know how it works in ours, but at the same time, we need to make sure it still works in ours. So we sent them an email, and they emailed us back, and they said, we use a modified version of WordPress Mobile Edition. They said, you just download that, install it, it should be sufficient for you. Their customized version of it takes it to a whole new level. So this is our theme switcher. It uses the user agent. If it sees Android, it will pick that up. If it sees iPhone, it will pick that up. If it sees BlackBerry, it will pick that up. I think it will even pick up iPad, I'm not positive, but on their end, they break it down client by client, and we can redirect them. BlackBerries go to the WP Touch theme, iPads go to the full site, everything Android goes to the mobile theme. We would have loved to send Honeycomb to the full site, but unfortunately, when you just stick Android and a version number in your user agent, it's a little hard to detect all that. So the first thing we had to do was we had to download the Mobile Edition plugin, which I seem to have closed. So let's open that back up. Right, so here's the plugin written by Alex King's team, so very near and dear to WordPress. And it ships with its own mobile theme. So the first thing we had to do was just come in here and change it to the name of our theme, and all that was it. Now it's looking for a theme in our themes folder by that name. And that's it. That's the magic. After that, it's done. All right, so everybody can just go home now. All right, so thank you. So just to kind of walk through how we went and did this. Some of this code is special to being hosted by VIP, so most of it you'll be able to ignore. But the way we sat down and we said, how can, we want to strip down our theme. We want to strip down the site. So we took the theme and we made a copy of it. So we copied our CBS local theme, made a CBS local mobile theme, and spent a couple of weeks stripping out pieces. And we said, oh, we don't need this function, let's take that out. We don't need this plugin, let's take it out. We don't need this widget, let's take it out. And that went on for a couple of weeks, and it was still incredibly bloated. it was doing way more behind the scenes than we needed it to do to process the page. So we threw all of that out. And one of the other guys and I sat together, joined at the hip for about a day and a half, and built most of what's up here. We did a little bit more after that to enhance it, but we just started from scratch, as if we were making a brand new theme, not based on anything. So the first thing we had to do was we had to go, once we had identified the pieces that we wanted to keep, we had a lot of them already. You know, we had a lot of our plugins. We had, Seraphin mentioned earlier, the Station Manager, which is our custom admin that has all sorts of settings. It has Google Analytics information, it has branding information, it has market locations, and it has tons and tons and tons of stuff. It has API keys and partner IDs, and you know, if we originally looked at it, we could have brought over the whole entire plugin, and that meant if it changed in one theme, we had to make sure we changed it in 2 themes. And you know, the same thing with Google Analytics. We had a template file that printed all of that out onto the page, and now we would have to go and recreate that. And as part of bringing the music sites into this theme, they have different Google Analytics configurations than the local sites did. So that would have been running around in 2 separate themes to make those changes. So the challenge became what's new, what's not. So the first thing we had to kind of do is we have, in the world of VIP, they'll give you as many themes as you want, really. So we have a CBS local theme, we have a CBS radio theme, we have a CBS News and Sports theme, we have the mobile theme. And just like any developer should strive for, they don't want a lot of plugins that live in multiple places. So the first thing was we have this local plugins directory that stores all of our common plugins. And then the other thing we wanted to figure out was where is the real theme? Because so much of what we need is already in there that we wanted to be able to just quickly make a reference to that. So we load up a ton of stuff, and here's some of the VIP magic of loading the list of VIP approved plugins. And then down here, we're loading our plugins. And as you can see, most of them come from the CBS Plugins there, which is the full theme. So, you know, our ad code is already there. We don't want to have to recreate the code that builds ads, because the last thing you want to do is forget to change it in one place and, you know, start losing revenue and breaking ads and getting the wrong person's ad on the page, because then they'll call you angry that their ad isn't where it's supposed to be. We have some of our custom post types, and so Voce settings, if anybody's interested, is the plugin that our admin is based on. Voce is a company that does a lot of WordPress work, and they helped us get started. So here's Add This, which is how we do our sharing. I believe Add This is now an approved plugin. I could be wrong, but at the time I don't think it was. So we kind of had to put it in our own theme. Here we load up some of the other approved plugins. One of the interesting things to note is the add image size. So here we have 4 image sizes that are specific to our mobile theme. One of the things that we didn't think about at first is we actually need those 4 lines of code in our full theme as well. Because when you upload an image into WordPress, it makes every size when you upload it. So if that size is not registered in the theme, it's not going to make it. There are plugins that you can get to go back and do it after the fact, but it's going to be way more efficient than being able to do it up front. So in the world of WordPress.com, it'll do it on the fly, but if you're doing this yourself, and you take a similar approach, make sure you get the image sizes in both. So here's they have some funky beautiful stuff. And then a bunch of these are, is a stripped down version of the scripts that we want to enqueue. I don't even think we're using jQuery Mobile anymore, but we still have it there if we want to. You can see all these calls that come from our Station Manager, and a lot of these other functions are functions that exist in the other theme already, but they're simple enough that we felt comfortable having them duplicated. So that's just kind of how we got started. Then we kind of moved into, so here's our Google Analytics in the mobile theme. And we load up the file the exact same way we do in our full theme. It's the same exact function call, but rather than duplicating that code, we gave it a reference back to our full theme. So anytime we change our Google Analytics in one theme, it will trickle through to both. That was one of the things we encountered. This is the full template for our posts. And you saw it was pretty simple, pretty clean. We drop an ad on the page. I believe we based a lot of this on, I think 2011 was the latest version of the built-in theme. We kind of followed the way they do it, where they use these content blocks. So we have all these content files over here. We don't have one called content single, so it just falls through to content. And here's what a post looks like. And you see we're using an article tag. We have our share bar prints out. We have a function call in two places with some actions set up to know which one should actually render it, or both. Here is how we want to, when we have our leads, which are the, I'm probably going to get them backwards. We have the carousel and we have the featured ones on pages, and they're fairly similar, but not completely. And that's really all that it takes to get a mobile theme working in WordPress. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it really isn't. When we look at our header, you can see we stripped down a lot from the head tag. And we have we have our char set, we have the viewport, which is important when you're working with mobile. We have our title, we have a style sheet, we have whatever WP head wants to do, and we have a favorite icon, which is baked into our theme. But we just kind of walk through this like we would. We have section tags, so we got to work a little bit with. Here's our very poor implementation of how to ask people to install a mobile app, which you got to see a little bit on the iPhone. It's smart enough to show you an Android screenshot if you're on an Android device. And this is there's a quick custom WP query to build out our stations. If you looked at it in our full site, this query is a little better. It's been touched more recently. It's a little bit smarter. That's one of the great things about working with VIP is they looked at that and they said, all right, that query definitely gets you the results, but if you drop in these couple of extra flags, it will actually return you the results a lot quicker. So, it just looks like any other WordPress theme, and that's honestly all that there is to building a WordPress mobile theme. You're silent, I know. There's not a whole lot. Like I said, we built most of it in a couple of days, building the theme from scratch. It's not, it wasn't our first WordPress theme, so that kind of helped. But having that full site to guide us and having kind of gone through that whole product decision phase really helped us just to figure out what pieces we want. And we have posts, we have categories, and we have pages, and that's about it. It's much smaller, and most of the actual real meat of it lives in our full theme, and we just load it up from that full theme.
So functions.php.
Yep.
A lot of those functions are duplicated in both themes.
Yeah, we kind of toyed with how do we, where do we move them, and it was just something that was so core to the site that we were afraid to start moving it around, because then this whole block at the top is where it starts to get a little messy, because when you set up themes on your own WordPress installations, everything goes in the themes folder. That's not where it lives on VIP. There's a VIP folder in there, and then everything lives inside of that. So you get a sandbox to test everything. That theme is then named after your theme with a suffix at the end. I think for all of ours, it's -preprod. And so, having to mess around with detecting, am I loading up our common plugins? Am I loading up our common plugins locally? Is it on pre-prod? Is it in production? There was so much of that going on that you have to kind of make the trade-off between duplication and moving parts.
I thought he was going to ask you, why not move that to also a common plugin? Just load the common plugin.
Yeah, we had looked at, when we first built the common plugins theme, we looked at how much we could move into that, and we started to shoot ourselves in the foot by overdoing it. So we kind of, at a certain point, cut ourselves off and said, all right, let's step back and really just focus on putting plugins there. And for the most part, a lot of our functions had different enough output, but in here, everything was identical. It was a little bit of duplication, but it was one of those things where if it broke in one place, we didn't want it to break everywhere, and it was so commonly used that
was important that we knew where it was and not have to worry about losing it and moving it around, which we've tried. And if you don't deploy everything in sync, you know, if you move it into your common plugins and, you know, somebody missed a function exists check in the full theme, everything's going to blow up. And when people go to cbsnewyork.com and get a blank white page, you get a lot of angry phone calls. So, yeah, it's one of those things you just kind of have to figure out the trade-off of moving parts versus reduced duplication. Yes?
Was part of the reason you didn't go with a parent-child theme?
I hate parent-child themes.
Yeah?
Yes. I absolutely do. I've never had a pleasant experience working with them. Functions behave, you know, you get style sheet directory URI and get template directory URI, and they return different results in a child theme. And it was just, there was so much, we had talked to them about doing that, and that was what we originally thought they were going to ask us to do. And there is just so much that's in the, would have been in the parent theme that we didn't need in the child. Originally, our main theme was a child theme, and the original vision that was had was a bit more overlap between the themes in the world of CBS Radio, and the experience that we had when that clearly was not the direction the themes were going, and they were so different that we wanted to break that, and they advised us to create the CBS local plugins theme instead. And the process of breaking that relationship was painful and just kind of soured me on the whole parent-child thing. But that and the amount of stuff that we didn't want, just the actions and the filters that get registered, and all those I should show you the plugins that the list of the functions file in the main theme. And I should reduce the font size, but when I get to and this is our list of plugins. And that's a lot of stuff that has to happen before a page can render. And it's anything, on a mobile device, there are so many variables in how quickly that page is going to load, right down to the connection they have, that anything we could do to speed it up was really what we were looking to do. Anybody else have a question? Or you guys just want to get out of here? It's getting kind of late. Right about it there. Yes?
What sort of caching do you use as far as
so it's all built into WordPress.com. I'm not sure if they use it on the mobile side or not. They use Backcache is the plugin that they use. That provides a 5-minute cache to all pages for guests. There are certain events in the admin that will trigger it to flush the cache. The pages themselves are cached for 5 minutes for guests. And they have all sorts of caching built in at the query level. And that's where some of the suggestions they'll make to us is like, this particular function you're using doesn't touch the cache. Don't use it. Or, they've given us a couple of pointers for common wrappers that some of their other clients write to add a cache around that. And so for anything that doesn't do that, we have get and set transient calls all over the place, which definitely will speed things up. That one WP query that's in the header of our site for the stations, I don't think there's a transient around it here. There is a transient around it now in our full site, which there are a lot of queries that our site runs in. For something like that almost never changes. We don't add new stations very often. We do, but not every day, so that can cache for a really, really long time. Then we run into other stuff where we want to provide as real-time information as we can. So there's the trade-off of what gets a cache and what has to have some smarts behind it. And that's where they're a really good resource for that too. They know what the bottlenecks on their end are, and they can say, hey, this query is killing us. And now they have a nice debug bar, I guess, that's part of their admin bar now. That gives you a lot of the information that you used to not be able to get in the past. And it's pretty similar to the plugin that's available in the directory.
Those best practices things that you're getting from WordPress.com, is that part of the VIP package?
So yeah, they have this a site called The Lobby, which has all sorts of, it's a huge wealth of information. It has the list of plugins that they approve that we have somewhere way down at the bottom, we have load VIP plugin, and it will load that up. We have, they have, the best practices that they want. A lot of it is just stuff that they would put in the codex. There's a lot of, they really try to, enforce that across the board, which, for a team of developers can be a little frustrating at times, but there definitely is a value to following it. Our code runs on their servers, so it's important to them that our code is in really good shape. So they definitely are constantly looking at what we give them and making sure it's as good as it can be. And the closer we follow their guidelines, the easier it is for them to get through it. We definitely see the speed at which they get through stuff. It's definitely related to how much we follow their guidelines. And then there's a ton of other information that they offer. Their rewrite rules work a little bit differently than WordPress.org's at the moment. And they, kind of guide you through that process. And I can't even tell you half of what's on there because it's a big, big site with lots and lots of very, very important information. You're all in the back.
No, there are no stupid questions. What's the name of this editor?
This is TextMate. Looks like my screen's a little bit cut off there, but it's TextMate. It's not the IDE that I use, but it's the text editor that I use. It does a good job handling some basic stuff. It's a little bit outdated at this point. There's a new version that the guy's working on, but it's I think an alpha, and I hate it. But version 1 is definitely much better. So I definitely have that. A couple programs that I've opened all day. I have this. I have Komodo, which is what I use. I use Tower. All of our stuff is hosted on GitHub, and I use Tower as the GUI that I use, but I also have a couple other ones installed for some quick stuff. I have a ton of terminal windows open all day. Probably common developer stuff.
Besides your app pop down, is there anything specific you have to do when you're detecting Android or iPhone?
We didn't have to do any of that work ourselves. For the pop down we did, but in terms of the actual sniffing.
Once you sniff it, is there anything you found that you need to load differently on iPhone?
No. It's it's HTML5, which every version of Android we looked at and every version of iOS that we looked at supported, and did a great job with it. There's a little bit of trouble with Blackberries, especially the older ones. So that's why they get WP Touch. It was a lot easier just to give them that.
This site, the lobby that you were talking about,
Yes.
Is that open to the public or only?
I don't think so. I know that as we bring on new developers, we have to basically submit a ticket to them. I think it's part of the VIP services you get. It's even stuff like when they have WordPress event, when they have WordCamp, their coverage is going to be light. So they have to deploy all of our code into production themselves after we submit it to them. So that, it's updates about that kind of stuff. But most of what they have there are the best practices for developing on WordPress.com. It's definitely a whole different set of rules than developing your own self-hosted installation. A lot of it just comes from the codex. So as long as everybody has access to that, so a lot of the most important information is right there. And it's all written by the same guys, so it's the same type of stuff. Yeah.
Just a quick question going back to the plugins. I mean, you basically every plugin that you added by yourself, you load into the theme.
Right. We don't have a plugins directory. It's part of WordPress.com. You have your theme, and that's all you have access to, except for a list of, I think it's up to about 36 plugins that they approve of. There's an Outbrain plugin, there's a Discuss plugin, there's an Intense Debate plugin. I think there's an Add This plugin, there's a Share This plugin. If you need anything beyond that, it has to be custom. Now we can go to the plugin directory, we can download a plugin, and we then have to kind of screen it for a lot of their best practices before we can even submit it to them. The other tricky part is plugins don't register and deregister. There's no activation hooks for a plugin because it all just loads up through these lines of code that you see right here, these require lines. So it's all stuff that's built into our theme, and in the case of this we didn't develop any special plugins for our mobile theme, so it's all built into the real full theme, same plugin. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I mean, it's good that you explained that as well. My actual question was, if I would build a separate theme on a self-hosted WordPress site for mobile, then I would have the problem that all those plugins that I use on the full site would automatically load.
Yes, you could have that problem. One of the things that I at some point switched to during WordPress theme development was more of this kind of forcing the plugins in the theme. What I came to realize, and this kind of helps see it a lot better, is that so much of what I built in a theme was designed around how a plugin being installed. That I would tend to take this exact same approach and just drop it into the theme and force it. It's definitely a different way of thinking and can be a little frustrating. You can still get them to show up as plugins, but you do run into that problem if you have a plugin that loads up in the regular plugin system, it will load up in both. One of the things that we did that is a little on the unique side is, hold on, I can dig for the file, but we chose not to support any of our shortcodes in the mobile theme. Obviously, we did not want shortcodes printing out on the site. So at the top of every single shortcode function, we dropped in a line. There's a function that they offer called isMobile, and everything just says if isMobile, return empty string. And we also, even just in the full theme, have come across places where we're deregistering all sorts of hooks based on the context. And that may be the best way to do it, is to see what the plugin is hooked into. And as part of your theme, after all those functions have initialized, just run through and kill them all. That was kind of the approach we originally took with our theme, but our theme is so big, and I mean, you saw how many plugins we had, that it was so much quicker to go in the other direction. It was built from the ground up.
For navigation, do you have a custom plugin?
No, we just use what's built into WordPress. I think everything is part of 3.0 when they put it in. We have a naming convention that we use across all of our navigations, across all of our sites, and I think it's something like mobile home, or mobile nav, some header nav, something like that is what we use, and it just reads a different nav in the WordPress menu system. But for that, we just left their stuff in. I think 3.0 was what was out when we started building the theme, so we were able to use a lot of that newer stuff, the ease of custom post types. All right, if that's...
I just want to say one thing. A lot of the, not a lot, but some of the VIP code is actually in the plugin directory. You just need to find the author automatic.
So I think yeah, and a lot of their guys write their plugins too. So I think Facebook Connect was one that we used to use. I forget who wrote it. It was one of their guys.
Auto.
Yeah, that's probably. So you would search him, and a lot of those plugins are the plugins that are part of VIP. It's a lot. If a plugin is popular enough, they will look to bring it in. People can also submit them. So Samantha probably went to them and said, "Hey, we've got this plugin. People love it. Can we get it in there?" And there's definitely some pains to get it to work the first time. It's a little bit different way of thinking. Like I said, there are no activation hooks, but it's definitely it's a big deal for people to get in there because there's not a lot, and they're great plugins that are in there. And so definitely look up what the VIP do. Alan, do you have a question?
No, not a question, but on that same vein, I think Automatic has put out like what do they call it?
Well, they have the Jetpack,
right?
Which is a lot of the .com functionality that you get for your dashboard and your admin bar that isn't built into .org. The WordPress builds they're running a theme, and they have all sorts of activation hooks or actions and filters set up that do all sorts of, they do it the same way everybody here would do it. And Jetpack was one of the big things that they did when they released that to the public. That was one of the big things that always held up people who really loved being on WordPress.com but felt their site had grown a little too big for it. It's a lot of stuff that our editorial side definitely live on that dashboard all day. It's some great stuff that they offer. That bar, every time that bar changes, we definitely hear about it because I've never seen people use that bar so much. So it's definitely it's a powerful tool for the editorial side.
So you can mention also, another thing in terms of VIP or WordPress.com, the limitation of the plugins is we actually can't modify the database structure. So again, he's saying if we find a plugin that we want to use, we have to make sure it doesn't do anything on the database level like that or anything.
Yeah. One of the questions we always get is, are you guys using anything like BuddyPress? And the answer is always no, because last time I checked, BuddyPress did some work to the database, so that immediately rules it out for VIP. So that's one of the where it really, why we end up with a lot of plugins that are our own plugins that really mimic stuff that already exists. Just because when you can't add a new table or add a new column, it really becomes a really interesting way of doing it. I mean, everything we do is a meta field. It's not a custom table. So it's definitely a different twist on WordPress development that, you don't have to do it. I don't recommend it, but I think at the end of the day, I think it takes a lot of the burden off of people developing the themes. You don't have to worry about that stuff. And you're really just using WordPress at the end of the day. All right.
It's sort of off topic, but what's it like for developers to be working at CBS?
I'm gonna be really biased. Is Margie still here? Margie, can you cover your ears, please? No, I mean, I've been there for about 16 months now. I think I was the first developer on the local side. Second one is here as well. I think we have about 10 right now, give or take. I think the whole department is getting close to 20 people on a team of over 100 people. We're over, local is much bigger than it was when I started. And I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, what's really nice for me is, we have the backing of a giant company. I have the power of CBS. I mean, it's great. We just did an event with Facebook last week that may not have been, we were able to roll out some new features using an API that they hadn't published, an SDK they hadn't really published documentation for. One of the nice things is when you contact them with a CBS address, they recognize it and they respond. But at the same time, we're a very young division in the company, and we definitely don't operate like the big stuffy company that a lot of people would think of when they think of a CBS or a News Corp. It's a lot of fun. I like to pull pranks on people in the office, especially when they go on vacation. Some of them enjoy it more than others. But we do a lot of work. We move at a very fast pace, but I think everybody enjoys it. We stop and have a good time. As the development team grows, we try to spend more time doing stuff together just to keep everybody in the loop. And like Alan mentioned, we do a lot that goes beyond just WordPress. So it's really interesting to kind of see the two sides come together, and there's stuff that's in WordPress, stuff that's not in WordPress, but hooked into WordPress through custom APIs that we've written. So it's definitely a chance to work with some fun stuff. And, I mean, they won me over with WordPress. That was what got me in the door. And, I've kind of passed that along to some of the other guys and definitely gotten to, it's definitely a different way of thinking and having to look at all their code before we send it along and see how, different people's code is and how much better it is having gone through that process for a couple of months. So I think it's definitely made everybody there a lot better. And, we have some guys who've only been there a couple of weeks and, they came back. So that's always a good thing. All right, so, oh, we got one more in the back.
One final question.
Yeah.
When will I be able to watch How I Met Your Mother on my iPad?
So, How I Met Your Mother, I believe, is actually owned by News Corp. The CBS.com content is all handled by one of our sister companies, CBS Interactive. They handle everything digital for CBS that's not what we do, I believe. We deal with all the local stations, and they deal with all of the national stuff. So I think a lot of people feel that we're a little bit behind, but CBS.com actually does a tremendous amount of traffic and video views. And I've definitely, as someone, I don't have cable, so everything I watch is either over the air or streamed, and I've definitely seen the amount of content offered increase over the years. And unfortunately, I can't get you content on TV. That was so many of my friends were said, "Oh, so great! I can watch a quick random CBS show," and I said, "No, I can't help you with that. I can get you the news. If you want to know it's going to rain tomorrow, I can tell you that. But I definitely can't help you with the TV side." So.
But in terms of traffic, do you see that people come to CBS, or do they come from other sources?
That I'm going to have to defer to somebody else. I don't really spend a whole lot of time with the analytics.
Traffic coming to CBS?
Is it coming, I guess, direct?
For the news?
Direct versus
we do get a lot of
organic?
direct traffic just because, on air we promote CBS New York. So people hear that and they go directly because they're looking for something, they saw a report, they heard someone talking about something, they want to find out more. So we do get a fair amount of direct traffic. And again, because of the brands we have, the way we promote it, as like a WFAN or as a 1010 Wins, people know those brands, and so they tend to go to that as well. So yes, we do get a lot of traffic, but we do have our own brands that help us. So people don't necessarily have to go to see, I don't even know if there's a link from CBS.com to our stuff at all.
Yeah, probably. I think we're probably under the.
Yeah,
I think we're probably on the CBS Interactive site, maybe. Or no, on CBS.com, I believe there is a list of all the wholly owned subsidiaries.
Goes to the corporate
Yeah,
site.
probably goes to the corporate site of CBS Radio, which then has a link to us. So,
it's an interesting structure how the whole companies.
That brings up one of the nice things. If you watch CBS, down under the eye, you will see CBSNewYork.com or CBSLosAngeles.com, whatever market you happen to be in, or on the radio, they're constantly driving people to the sites, and even walking around New York City, there are billboards and posters in the subway. You see a picture of Maurice Dubois and Barry Calvin, and it'll say CBSNewYork.com. So that's one of the other nice things about being at CBS is we have ads, we have advertising all over the place that drives people to our site through means that aren't necessarily available to conventional.
We have a very large megaphone, and we can, when we need to drive traffic or we want to drive traffic, we can.
All right, I think that sound means it's time.